Hello, welcome to From the Mic Stand. I'm Charles Ormrod, standing in for our editor, Mike Chisholm.
Hello.
Good evening.
Hi, how's it going?
Pretty good from all the way over here. Do you know, it's a good thing we've got a wide-angle lens.
It is,
Because you're such a long way, we've got to shout from quite a way off. You have a book out.
I do, yes, so we're here on
Like
our
Contrafigularities.
We're down in our studio because unfortunately MASH is closed, isn't it, at the moment? It's all the new regulations and things, so yeah, we are socially distanced and down in our studio this week.
Yes, I mean, usually when we're in the same room, you're all the way over in the other side of the room anyway.
That is true.
And we have to throw a pair of aeroplanes with notes to each other. And chocolate oranges. So I think the best way, as you do in your inimitable style, which I can only possibly attain, could you do a poem to open up? Because that's the best way you could possibly introduce yourself as a poet.
So yeah, I am a poet. I go by the ruler of the goddamn universe, and this is the first book that I've released. It's called Ruling the Universe and Other Occupations. It's now available on Amazon, and the 24th of October, it's also going to be, I'll have physical copies. How I'm going to get them to everyone, I really don't know. Maybe somewhere I'll be open that I can do some kind of book launch. Yeah, but I'm going to start with a poem that is about my dream, which is to have this book, which is kind of strange. I've been talking about having a book for 10 years, and I never really thought it'd be a book of poetry, to be honest. I've been writing a storybook as well as this, but I ended up writing a book of poetry, probably because people started asking me, have you got anything written down? Can I buy a book? And I'm like, no, I don't have one. So, this is a simple dream. A little book on your shelf, found in some forgotten second-hand bookstore. The pages worn with age. Spine creased again and again through years of use. The pages turned down to mark your latest favourite. The one you read whilst dreaming of a first kiss. The one that helped you keep going when you thought that life couldn't get any bleaker than this. The one that first made you smile again. The one that reminds you of an old friend. The one that you read when your dad died. The one you read at your wedding and you couldn't help yourself, but you cried and cried. Tears of joy streamed down your cheeks. The one you read whilst wondering if it was a girl or a boy. Other people's moments. Other people's memories framed by my heartfelt poetry. Now I love the immediacy of a Facebook post. And yes, a website is a nice place to host them. Nothing replaces that connection found on the stage. And it seems a shame to leave them scrawled in notebooks, Word documents and bits of scrap paper. One day, though, you may find these words in a dusty corner, in a quiet library. And I'm not quite sure about a bestseller, but one can dream. And the second poem I'm going to start off with, it's about Shakespeare, kind of. And it's called I Could Murder Shakespeare. They found Romeo and Juliet dead on the kitchen floor. On their patio there were bodies by the score, from soliloquies, quotes, whole tragedies and more. Wordsworth Field were soaked in blood. Daffodil the poets left at each scene, their words were mangled, their literary crimes obscene. A Keats was taken down in a casual drive by shouting of ode to a nightingale. Machine gun stutter left many a Dickens work dead in the gutter. Coming a crime spree as parts of Dylan Thomas were lifted wholeheartedly. Whole childhoods were about to be eviscerated as a speaker contemplated Roald Dahl or J.K. Rowling. The words were just spilling out. No one could stop them flowing. Tolkien and C.S. Lewis were left in bloody pieces to a savage attempt from a literary thesis. And even Douglas Adams and Terry Pratchett weren't safe. Their funniest quotes left a rictus grin on the audience's face. So tonight, the only words that I'll murder are my own.
Splendid. That last one is one of my favourite ones because as a piece of poetry, it's a rubbish bit of poetry, but there's so much that's so funny in it, and the rhyme is just so and the rhythm and everything about it. So what do you think personally when you're doing your poetry? Like what is a good bit of poetry and a bad bit of poetry to you? Is it a rhyme thing or is it a rhythm thing or?
To be honest, I just like poetry that evokes emotion, and you can tell that it's written from the heart, or it's written from a specific moment that you can feel that moment. So it might entertain you, and it might make you laugh. You might think, "Oh yeah, I could see myself doing that," or it might make you like get emotional and think, "Damn," or like you can look at something in completely like a new way. I think that makes poetry to me. I'm not even sure if I'm a poet some of the time. Like some of the times that could just be like a story or it's a comedian. And one of the things about being a poet rather than a comedian is you can tell a story and it can be really funny. Tell a story and maybe it's more of a ghost story, or you get an emotional love story, or maybe you could chat about mental health. And you can do that as a comedian, or you can do that as an actor, but you have to have like a joke at the end. You have to have a punchline all the time.
Yes.
Whereas this gut punch could be completely different.
It's so strange, isn't it? So like when you're writing it, what kind of situation are you in? You know, not just mentally but physically.
Yeah.
Like where do you sit to write?
So I write everywhere, absolutely everywhere. So I write at 3 a.m. just in my bed. I might get my iPad out and I type things out. I have my phone and I'll be sitting in a coffee shop and I'll write some poetry. I'll be on the back of the bus and I'll write some poetry. I'll be listening to a gig and I've heard a cool line and I'll write some poetry.
Oh yeah. Of
So
course,
yeah, I just write everywhere, and I've done that for quite a long time. Really, I think I do less now. I think it's a little bit more structured now, but even though it's just like a few lines here and there, I do write like pretty much constantly. Just to get those ideas out there, and sometimes it can just be 2 or 3 lines and I'll forget it, or it can be like a whole poem, really.
Yes. Yeah. So I mean, it's the same kind of when I'm writing music, you come up with sometimes just a melodic idea, and that's all you need to create an entire poem. And sometimes a piece of music, and sometimes it needs a lot more refinement. So do you tend to write quite quickly with your poems then?
Well,
do they come?
It depends, because some of them are like stream of conscious almost, and then some of them I've actually put quite a bit of research into them. So for example, Fire Strikes Back, which I'll do later on, and it's all about the conspiracy theory that we live on a flat Earth. I went to their actual website, and they have a list of like physics concepts. So I went through all the different physics concepts and ticked them off as I did my poem. Okay. And I did a poem about the world's wife. So it's kind of a love story, and it's about relationships, and it's about contacting someone years after the fact and like trying to get a response from them. Really, it's also about how the moon was formed, so I kind of researched that a bit.
So there is actually physics. Because you did physics.
Yeah, I did a physics degree as well.
So so that keeps going back to the theme. I love there are certain themes in like a personification.
Yeah,
which keeps
definitely.
coming back. I think that certainly later on, I think we should definitely talk about that when you do those poems. There's one little line in that that first poem that you did, A Simple Dream, which I quite like, where you have it seems a shame to leave these scribbled in notebooks and documents on bits of scrap paper. Yeah. And then you talk about the immediacy of a Facebook post. So, because I've seen on your Facebook, you just kind of share a poem more or less as soon as it's ready. So how does that compare with having a published book?
It's really weird, because now I've got this book, I think I'm a published author, but I run Artist Echoes, so I've published 500 articles on there.
Oh, exactly, yes.
I've got a website for Rule the Goddamn Universe, and I've published so many poems on there, and I've been published in the virtual world for years, but this just feels real, because you can hold it maybe, and like, growing up, I read so many books, Tolkien and Terry Pratchett, and like, it was like, it's almost kind of like, when you're growing up, like the people who do books and films and music and things, it's kind of like mythical, when you're like, how could I ever do that? And you meet friends who've done albums, or they've done videos or whatever, so you think, oh, I could do one of these, and then you actually get it in your hands. It's like quite a
good
moment,
it's
isn't
real.
it?
It
feels
alive.
real.
It does, and it's so much different, especially now, because so much is online. Because I know we were talking the other day about how streaming music, like you'd have to stream, was it something like 3,500 streams to be the equivalent of an album or a book?
No, 3,500 streams is the equivalent to the amount of royalties that I get off one book sale.
Right, which is just ludicrous. And you don't have anything physical to hold. Because as it happens, I've got my first CD produced for the first time in my life, because I've only ever done digital stuff. And it's the same thing. It's just it's so little and lightweight, and you're just looking at it and thinking, "Good Lord, that's 10 years' work."
Yeah. Mm.
Yeah, it's quite extraordinary.
Yeah, because some of these poems are 10 years old, and
Yeah.
I look back and, I actually performed that when MASH opened at Oxjam, and I'm like, that's really that old? Makes me feel a bit older, but, and then one of these poems, the latest poem is actually already over a year old.
Oh, right.
So this book, writing's been 3 years, so it should have come out like last October, but it was Christmas time and I had a lot of work on, so I pushed it to March to celebrate my birthday. And then all the restrictions came down, and I kind of had a break for everything. And I was like, and now I'm like, I'll just get it out there.
Well, it's ready for this Christmas. So if anyone's looking for a Christmas present, there's a terrific book of poetry going. So what else have you got in there that you could read as a?
So I'm going to go back more towards the start, and this one I actually have a video that I've done on the channel called Hometown. And it's like arty black and white shots of Macclesfield, and then it's got the poem running behind it, and I've added some like alterations to my voice to make it kind of sound like echoing things, like it's an authoritarian like 1984 kind of style.
Good Lord.
And like all the words are there as well. But this is Hometown. And it was also like kind of making fun of myself, because like this is the kind of thing I used to say when I was in my 17 or 22 and like wanting to escape a small town. I stand there and moan about this town. All my dreams revolve about moving away. Stuck here to the grave, or so I say. I stand and complain that there's nothing to do. Half these fools, they don't have a clue. And have you seen what they wear, all Henleys and trainers and that permanent slouch? You know, they're somehow satisfied by the 9 to 5 and the humdrum soundtrack to their lives. The only way they get by is in a drunken haze and a latching on to the next craze. Stand here and moan about my friends and the rain that never ends and the deluge of their lives. And yet somehow, I don't mind living in this town. So I'm going to do a couple now, and then we can chat about them all. So this next one, when I initially wrote it after getting back from a holiday and having a little bit of a holiday romance type thing, it was quite quite an immediate poem. And there's a line like, "Memories of sunk ashore long ago," and now it actually is long ago, so it's weird. So yeah, this is lost in translation. "Upon a sunken shore long ago I left you crying. Down a forgotten highway we used to tread. Down by the river delta we screamed our hearts out, where two lovers walked hand in hand instead. Yet for a while with the talk of the town, doing things, saying things that only we could. It was all so ecstatic, all broke down. Accusations were thrown. Do you do this in every town? Some drunken sailor doing the rounds?" I said, or I wished I'd said, "Places like this, they make you dream you could. They make you wish you could fall in love again. I'm not sure if I've fallen for you, for Selena's maudlin charm. And I don't know if those words were lost in translation or in a drunken haze. Those be fond memories of a sunken shore long ago." So the next one I'm going to do is stage double. I've probably performed this one hundreds of times. Probably performed this one 100 times at Swan with 2 Necks. When I first sent this poem to my friend Shay, and he's just sent back 2 words, "nailed it," which I thought was great. When you're performing poetry, especially at a rocky venue, as it kind of is at times, the Swan with 2 Necks, you get a lot of comments, and this was just my reply to those people. People always tell you what to do, what to say when you're up on stage. You're a white rapper, pretend to be black. You're my homies, you're all like that. Stand up here and rebel. Tell you all how the establishment sent us to hell. I'm gonna be a rock star with that cocksure strut. Is that me? Is that what you down or expect to see? And still people tell you what to do, what to say when you're up on stage. Stand up here, strum my acoustic, the same sad songs about a girl that got away. And yeah, it'd be nice to make you laugh and smile. We could all forget our troubles for a while. Could be another emo kid with a chip on his shoulder going, "Why me? Why me?" Sadly, that's part of my history. People always tell you what to do, what I say when you're up on stage. Play those same 4 chords that we know so well, rinse and repeat, that could sell. Write some lyrics of a hip-hop beat, tell you all how I'm down with the street. Check out my bling and my sweet ride. Well, here goes. Yo, 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 she's a rascal here on the microphone, volunteer down at CCPA. No, don't get paid, that's how you roll. And I'm sitting down here with my degree, tell you all how they fucked the economy. Wait a minute, mate. Here's sweet ride out. Now wait, mate. It's just another bus wanker. Is that me? So you dare expect to see. And still people tell you what to do, what to say when you're up on stage. And I can scream into the microphone. Tell you all how we worship the devil, the gods of heavy metal. I could sing some lyrics about my achy, breaking heart. It's blues where I get my start. What do you reckon? Who should get the part? And I'm going to do one final one. Bit weird because you're doing these poems and you do them on stage. And you just kind of have to keep going if you do one kind of slip up. So I did CCP instead of CCR, and it's like, I'll just keep going. It's fine. So this one, I actually wrote in 2011, which is surprising. I didn't know it was 9 years old, and I wrote it when Gil Scott-Heron died. He's very famous for knowing and writing "Revolution Will Not Be Televised," and he's like father of beat poetry. And some friends of mine, they did a show at uni called The North-South Divide, and they always started the show with "The Revolution Will Not Be Televised." So I wanted to write something, and it was very short to begin with, actually. It was, "The Revolution will not be televised, will not be 104 characters or less. Revolution will not be televised, will not be on the back page of the Express." And that was it. And that was all I would perform. And it's just grown over the years and changed every time I perform it. But performers quite like it because it's all about performing and getting on stage and kind of expressing yourself. And also there are 280 characters on Twitter, but I'm not going to change that. So here we go. Revolution will not be televised. It will not be in 140 characters or less. Revolution will not be televised. It will not be on the back page of the Express. Revolution will not be televised. It will not require you to like this page, like this page, like this page. Revolution will not be televised. It will not require a hashtag, hashtag, hashtag. Revolution will not be televised. It will not be on an ITV talent competition judged by Simon Cowell. Revolution will not be televised. It will not be on BBC 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6 music. Revolution will not be televised. Found in those empty open mic nights. Venues are all closed down, and those street corners we all pass on by. Revolution will not be televised. It will not require you to retweet this, or retweet this. Revolution will not be televised. It will not require you to share, like and subscribe. Share, like and subscribe. Revolution will not be televised. It will not be on your iPod, iPad or other device. Revolution will not be televised. It will not be found at Leeds, Glastonbury or V. Revolution will not be televised. It will not require you to rethink, retrain, reboot. Revolution will not be televised. It will not be televised. It will not be televised. Revolution will not be televised. Found in our hearts and in our minds. In the songs that we sing, in the art that we create. The revolution will be found here. It will be found live. Thanks.
Hurrah to that. Yes, and I love how that you can keep just refreshing yourself, updated.
Yeah.
Like that reskill reboot.
Mm.
I liked how you snuck that in there. Can we just unpack, because there's lots to
Sure.
take out of that. So I have the opportunity now to ask you some deep and searching questions.
Great.
What's your favourite colour?
Oh God, I don't really have just one. I quite like
Deep answer.
turquoise, and I like turquoise blue and turquoise green, and I like blue and green and red. Those are my favourite colours.
Oh, yeah. So mainly the kind of cool end of the spectrum with a bit of a red highlight in there.
Yeah, I think so.
Interesting. That's nothing to do with the next question that I was going to ask, surprisingly enough. So there's a lot that you've got in about in Hometown and also Patches and Places, which is
Yeah,
there's one
sure.
from the book, which is about this. There's a certain coziness to being in your own town, but it's a slightly oppressive coziness, isn't it? Sometimes there's this sense of like feeling extraordinary in some way. You know, in the very literal sense, you're not an ordinary person. You're not like everybody else.
Yeah.
And everybody feels like that. And I like the way you kind of bring that out in the poetry. Is there anyone you have kind of in mind to address the poem to when you're doing this, or are you speaking from your own perspective?
I think it's just anyone who feels like they're in a small town and they're almost kind of trapped and confined by it, and they can't really, they don't have an opportunity to maybe express themselves. There isn't an opportunity to do that many different things. And I mean, I remember when I was writing it, and I don't now in Macclesfield. Well, I suppose I've grown up in Macclesfield now, so I'm older, so I'm more used to this kind of thing. But when I was writing it, there was no MASH, Cabin 5150 hadn't opened, No Use hadn't opened.
Yeah, yes.
There were so many different venues in Macclesfield that hadn't opened. I mean, there was the Swansea Next, which is brilliant. It's been there for years, but there was very few venues, and I'd just come back from living in Leeds, which is a massive city, and there's loads of things going on, there's loads of things to do. And
it's a 24-hour place, isn't it? Whereas in Mac...
And I'd always planned to like leave Macclesfield, and I don't know, I'd go to Manchester or London, and I just ended up staying here, and you kind of create your own family around it, and I've ended up meeting all the different creative people, so there is that under the surface.
Yes.
And you kind of got a band now of all the outsiders maybe.
Yeah.
But I think everyone's kind of frustrated, and it's frustrating about like clone towns, like how everywhere's the same, and it's just the general frustration that the things that become popular are probably quite middle of the road in a way, just because that's the common denominator, and they'll end up more popular than other things. But people say there's no good music these days, or there's no good TVs these days, whereas they're probably just comparing it to like an entire decade. They're saying, oh, there was loads of brilliant music in the 90s. And I'm like, yeah, that was the 90s, that was 10 years.
Circumstance, yeah, and also everything you hear in the kind of the big media, as it were, I don't even know whether that's a proper term, but you're going to hear better stuff if you just go to the pub on a Friday. I mean, not at the moment, unfortunately, obviously, but I mean, that's why Artistic Echoes exists,
exactly.
isn't it?
And you'd get artists come in, and you'd get some really like cool ones, and we got the guy from Squeeze, he was the bassist in Squeeze for a while. He came with the Jar family, and like he signed. We got loads of people to just sign the names and sing, and he was like, "Sorry for the music." That's what he wrote. I thought, that's where you have to be like. I mean, it's great. I love it when people are just kind of like laid back about it all. Plus, I really like an artist called Frank Turner, and he does. I mean, a lot of people know who he is these days. He's quite a big artist these days, and he does a song about getting on stage, and if it says one of his lines, if you're so fucking different, who cares what you have to say?
Yeah, there is something to be said of your being too individual, and it's just being a bit of an outsider.
But I think it's against people being arrogant rather than.
It's kind of, which goes in quite nicely with your poem. Which one was it? It was like the second one of the second lot about being on stage and having these different personas.
Stage double.
Yes, stage double, of course. About having these different personae that you're trying to, not that you're trying to be, you're trying not to be.
Yeah.
And people trying to put you in different situations.
And it's also about, it's not exactly not trying to be them, it's like trying to find your own voice on stage. I think that's really important.
Yes.
And trying to find your own persona on stage. Like, for years I think I just performed as Michael Chisholm, and then when I came on as the ruler of the goddamn universe, that's a great line to say on any stage, because it gets a laugh straight away and you've already started, you know. And like, I actually started that line, I think it was when I was starting Artist Echoes, and I had a conversation with a mate in a pub, and said, oh yeah, I could be called the ruler of the goddamn universe. And there was this blog post, and it was like, millennials have to have these new and interesting job titles to keep them in the jobs. And I was like, okay, I'll go for the most overblown job title ever, and I'll go, the ruler of the goddamn universe. And so I put that on like my Facebook or something, and my sister bought me a hoodie with it on, Artist Echoes logo, and we're all the goddamn universe. And like, whenever I'd meet bands and stuff, they'd laugh at it and we'd have a chat about it. It was a great icebreaker. And then other people said, oh, I'll buy that on a t-shirt. So I thought, yeah, that's going to be my performing name now.
As job descriptions go, it's quite a hard one to surpass.
Plus, I kind of explain it in the book as well. It's like, I joke on a few different levels. So like, I believe like writers, they can create universes. Like Tolkien, You can imagine what Middle Earth is like, and you can walk in there. Stan Lee created all the Marvel universes that exist now. Terry Pratchett, you know what the Discworld looks like. So as a writer, you can create your own universe, and then the other one was like about mental health, basically, because I'm bipolar, and at one point I did believe I was God or something like that. When you're manic, you have these delusions of grandeur, which like are insane, and I won't wish them on anyone, but like you do believe these incredible things, and like it was a kind of a play on that. I think if you can laugh at tragic things, that's another one of the things
you do make
in the
light
book.
of that in a very amusing and gentle sort of way throughout the book, and this theme that keeps coming about physics, well, astrophysics, you know, and planets, and how you're instead of interacting with people in a small town kind of world, they are interstellar, intergalactic proportions.
Yeah, definitely.
Having conversations across timescales.
Oh yeah, I've got a couple on that. I've got like time and roots, and I did one all about my roots and like how
roots is one I'd like to chat about later on after.
So yeah, it's how like everything we do is kind of interconnected, even though like we're in a small town in Maxfield, but I've got a writer who lives in Mexico, and I've got a writer who lives in America, and it's like, bloody hell, it's kind of mind-boggling how it all works. So I'll do time now, because that's kind of related to what we've been chatting about. Time was getting old. Things had changed from those early days, when it was just chaos and confusion. Excitement of not knowing what would happen next. That was a long time ago. Now the years were starting to catch up on him. Age was leading to forgetfulness. When you or I forget things, like why you went into a room and where I left my high skis, no big deal really. Recently though, he lost an entire solar system. Gone. Vanished. Later realising it was one of those damn black holes. And that was a mistake if there ever was one. I suppose we all get lazy, and it was getting pretty cluttered for a while. Now something had to be done to keep himself interested. A nice little project to ensure that his mind was active. I guess that's how the Earth came about. You probably heard of it. Small planet, spiral arm of galaxy. And to begin with, things were going really well. That was until he decided to get creative. And you may think humans are funny looking, but you should have seen his first attempts. A whole hodgepodge of wacky ideas. From sentient jellyfish to tribes of dinosaurs. Humans though, that's when things got strange. For some reason they kept trying to measure him. Some seemed to define their lives by him, and in some circles time is known as a dimension. What will they think of next?
The ridiculousness of that is just, and the fact that, I mean, not just there's so many things in that to look at the scale of things, because you just want to stand on the top of a big hill and look at everything and go, what a load of rubbish. Like all those people thinking these ridiculous things. Yeah. It's like look up. You know, see what's going on, and you're looking again at the idea of playing with an idea you're a bit bored. Yeah. And you've done something, a poem or a piece of music or whatever it is, and you think, I'm going to faff around with it, and you have all these different weird versions of it. None of which quite make it to the finished product, and then the finished product just ends up being something which is it just seems far more than you intended it to be. Yeah,
I think you get a few ideas in, and then you kind of add little bits to it. So like the bit where it's about sentient jellyfish and tribes of dinosaurs, there's actually a book by Terry Pratchett, and it's called The Science of the Discworld, and then they have this computer called Hex, and they use Hex to create the world, and like all the I was going to say musicians, but they're magicians, aren't they? Yes. All the magicians in the Unseen University, they create a version of Earth, and on the Earth there's all these like different eras, but in the different eras there's like little tribes of dinosaurs and little different civilizations of all the different epochs rather than just human civilizations. It's all these weird civilizations. So it's kind of based on that, and I suppose it's got a bit of Douglas Adams stuff in there as well. You know.
Yes, it is. It is when Douglas Adams, like Slotty Bartfast, isn't it? Where they Earth 2.0, and when they've created it, say to Arthur Dent, we've put everything in place. You know, we're all ready to go. Is there anything you think you could do without?
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, me.
Plus, like, I sort of like my dad used to say things like "engage brain" and stuff like quotes from like Douglas Adams as well. So it's kind of like growing when you're growing older and like losing your mind. Like when you're very tired and.
Yes.
Not
So
saying
you
it's
kind
losing his
of
mind.
you feel like you're about 3 inches behind yourself. And that sort of thing.
So I don't know how long we've got left. We could do 4
Time
more.
is an illusion.
Time is an illusion. We've got 4 more poems
Much
to
time
do. So I've got the 2 superhero ones and the 2 political ones to do.
Okay. Do you have a preference as to the order?
So I'll do the 2 superhero ones.
Okay.
Right. So this one is called Superhero Acrobatics, and originally there was going to be 2 versions in the book, and one was called Superhero Acrobatics, and the other one was going to be called Superhero Frolics, but I've saved the Superhero Frolics for a future book because I hadn't finished that. So Superhero Frolics just makes all these poems really deft, whereas I wanted to try and get sum up a superhero in like 3 words. And it's based on a poem by Blacklicious, and they go through the alphabet and they go A da 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 da, B da 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 da. And I saw Daniel Radcliffe, Harry Potter, and he was on an American chat show, and he did the Blacklicious track like just from memory, and everyone was like, "Oh well, he's amazing." And I thought, well, everyone used to say I look like Ron Weasley, so I've got to one up him and do the superheroes. So here we go. Also, I want to point out that this is a published poem in a book, and I once did this at a MASH poetry night, and I scored 12 points out of 40 for this. So you don't have to do well at poetry slams to get a published book. So here we go. Superhero Acrobatics. Aquaman's aquatic allies, Batman beats Bane, Catwoman's comic caper, Daredevil dancer with death, Electric elegant executioner, Flash, fast, forward, Groot grows gigantic, Hulk hurls houses, Iron Man ingenious industrialist, Joker jape junkie, Kick-Ass kills Kingpin, Loki less lordship, Magneto manipulates metal, Nick Fury neutralizes Nemesis, Oracle orchestrates operations, Penguin's parasol punctures people, Silver quite quick, Robin returns as Red Hood, Spider-Man snaps stories, Thor tames thunder, Ultron utilizes umpteen units, Venom vicious a violent villain, Wolverine whacks William Stryker, Xavier exemplifies X-Men, Yellow Jacket yes, Yellow Zatanna zaps zombies.
Good lord.
Funny, I could have done that from memory and then I looked down the book
I wondered where
to
you
see
were
where I
going,
was, and I was like, I screwed up my time. I also had quite good fun once. I went to comedy night at the Fab Cafe, run by Tuesday Tony, and I like did actions for it all. So I do like Aquaman, I do like...
We're doing a dance routine.
Yeah.
Interpretive dance.
It was so weird though, because you were doing comedy to a whole bunch of other comics, and I was like, that was quite unnerving. But there are also TVs in Fab Cafe, you've been there, and they show like old pop culture things, and they were showing Scooby-Doo, so you're basically performing a lot of people who are ignoring you watching Scooby-Doo. Most of the time you're performing people who are ignoring you.
That's a hard audience capture. Scooby-Doo's the competition.
And yeah, this one's I'm Batman, and been performing this one for quite a few years. And then I went to an open mic night in Chester with my sister, and I randomly decided that musicians, they get people to sing choruses, and that's a lot of fun. So I thought I'd just get everyone to shout out I'm Batman, and some people in the crowd responded and did it. And I've done that for years now, and it's kind of become like a thing that gets requested all the time.
Something of a favourite, isn't it? This one.
So here we go. I'm Batman. My parents died outside a movie theatre when I was young. I'm Batman. Well, that could be true for anyone knows. They never come to any of my shows. I'm Batman. Patrol the streets of Gotham, keep you safe from harm. I'm Batman. Well, you see me at the bar later, keep you entertained with my drunken charm. I'm Batman. I live in a mansion with my butler and my own secret lair. I'm Batman. Live with my parents. Does anyone really care? I'm Batman. Contact me with a sign and all your troubles will be fine. I'm Batman. I'm on Twitter. That counts, right? I'm Batman. Got Superman, Aquaman, Wonder Woman and the whole Justice League. I'm Batman. I got you guys in the crowd chant I'm Batman out loud. I'm Batman. Defeat Joker, Harley, Two-Face without breaking a sweat. I'm Batman. Well, at least I made it to the end of the week without too much to regret. I'm Batman.
So it's only Wednesday at the moment.
I
So
normally
there's-
do
there's
this,
still-
but at least I made it to Wednesday.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun with a theme like that because it's so. Hang on, I've got my finger caught in my hair. It's so juvenile, isn't it? You know, and like that first poem, which is just, you know, something like that. Was it Quicksilver?
Quite quick.
Quite quick.
Yes. Some of them I was really struggling for, but it was like I got to
so
Y,
much
and it was like
liberty
yellow
to-
jacket, yes, yellow. I did it.
But it just works because the whole thing is quite childish, and you just get to be somebody else in each of the different situations in the Batman thing. So I mean, I notice on your desk, of course, you've got various Batman figurines and all sorts of things. So when did you get into the whole comics thing? Because I'll be honest, it's not something I'm really into. So tell me about it.
Well, I suppose, when I was growing up, there was the Batman, the animated series that was on the TV, and like a lot of people say that was one of the best versions of Batman there ever is, because, I mean, it has Mark Hamill as the Joker, and it has like an amazing Batman, and the animation is beautiful, and it looks kind of like the 1950s kind of skyline and things, and it's kind of inspired by the 1989 Batman films, and I really enjoyed those. And then obviously Heath Ledger as the Joker, that was a brilliant thing as well. And then after actually writing this poem, I started to read like the comic books. I more watched the movies than actually read the comic books, but I found a way to read all the comic books, so I've read lots of different Batman comic books since doing that. So I've got more into comic books over the last 4 or 5 years, but I think that's just kind of how popular culture's gone in a way, and it's really interesting storytelling medium because it's got all the images and the text as well, and it can be really light and childish, or then some of them can be like really deep and interesting, like the Sandman comics by Neil Gaiman. They deal with so many different themes and things like that, and it's just like incredible some of the things that he goes into, even some of the Batman movies, you know.
Yeah.
And like, it's weird, I wrote that one and it was thinking I'd be a better Batman than Ben Affleck. You know, Ben Affleck's been Batman for like 5 years or something.
Yeah, I mean, you need.
And
quite
also
a CV
the video
to,
games of Batman are brilliant as well. And also there's this TV series called How It Should Have Ended, and they kind of take pop culture movies and they kind of like lampoon them, and they say, oh, if they'd done such and such a thing, the movie would have just ended here, and they've done such and such a thing, the movie
so
would
kind
have
of
ended
exploiting the
here.
plot holes sort of thing.
And it's kind of like an animated little comedy short that's 3 or 4 minutes. And at the end, Superman and Batman are having like a conversation over coffee, and then so that's the ongoing little bit at the end. And like, I'm Batman is like his catchphrase. That came in there as well.
Okay, yeah. There was an interesting point I was just going to pick up on. That was what was it? Oh, I know what. Yeah, I was talking to a theatre director quite recently who, when we were talking about the difficulties of putting theatre in a situation where you can't have theatres,
right?
And how you can lead one scene into another, and people have to infer the differences. And he said, when you're reading comics, certainly the old comics, I'm not sure about the new ones, they would leave a break, a gap between one image and the next, and you had to infer what had happened. And there were a number of different things that could have gone on in there.
I've not particularly read a comic like that, no.
I'm not sure. It did say that it's not so much of a common thing these days. I mean, they are quite mainstream now, and they call them graphic novels because graphic novel is just a collection of a series of comic books. It sounds fancier and more adult, I suppose. But yeah, you can read comic books that are very adult. So like I'm reading one called Hack and Slash at the moment, and it's basically about loads of different horror movies. And there's this woman that goes around with, and she basically beats up all the different horror movie villains, and they kind of make fun of all the different horror tropes. Right, because I was just going to ask actually about what you see it as being in terms of the demographic it's pitched at. Because there seems to be a pretty broad range, especially these days. It's a broad range of really
I think so.
adult, violent stuff. Even though there's a lot of violence in the ones for children, but it's a very light-hearted.
Well, there are loads, and the comic books that have no violence in them at all, and they're just like, I think these days it's very mainstream, isn't it? Especially with all the Marvel movies, and the comics are just, you see them in Tesco's and.
Yeah, you do. I have to say, I went to see Deadpool at the cinema. Was it Deadpool 2? I can't remember. Anyway, it only lasted 45 minutes.
Right, okay.
I couldn't put up with it.
Fair enough.
It was a bit too well done. Bit too realistic, cinematic.
And then there are loads of, like The Walking Dead, that's based on a comic book.
Is it?
Yeah, The Walking Dead was originally a comic book. There's a comic book for Game of Thrones. Lock and Key that's on Netflix now, that's a comic book. Snowpiercer, that was a comic book or a graphic novel.
I mean, also, are you thinking of doing any of this? Because the doodle that you've got, the sketch on the front of that is brilliant. It's a shame because that's your proof copy.
So written over.
So they've got this great big band across the front of it. But everything you have, as far as I can see on your notebooks and everything in your desk, there are always doodles associated with it. Is that a graphic novel kind of influence, or is that just you kind of finding other ways to express and understand what you're...
Yeah, I've always done like little doodles and things, and I bought this, there's a site, Humble Bundle, where you can get bundles of loads of cheap comic books, not comic books, books and games and video games and things, and some of the money goes to charity, and I bought like 10 different ice books for like a tenner, so I want to go through them and learn to draw a bit more properly, and I have like looked into doing more comics and things with it. And I was half thinking of doing like sketches for all the different poems, but then the book would have been out in another 5 years' time. I just reached a point where I just wanted to get it done, you know.
Yes.
And then after you've done one, you keep putting it off and putting it off. Once it's done and out there, I can say, oh, next year I'm going to release this book. And then I'd be a lot more confident releasing another book just next year. I've already got 3 different titles for it.
You've got the material for it, you've got the title, it's just a case of curating and compiling it.
I'm thinking of doing a few designs and putting them with poems, and then if people want to buy a poem, individual poem, they'll be able to do that on the website. So that is something that I'm definitely considering. And I did do like a few different comics for Revolution Will Not Be Televised, just a few sketches, and called it Poetry in Revolt. And so like it's got like some guy sat on a TV. So yeah, I think it starts with you see a group of protesters, and then you have a guy in a TV, and then it zooms out and he's watching a group of protesters on a news program, and then it's meant to zoom out and then move from different situations, and then it follows the lyrics in the poem. And it's flowing. It's though the camera's flowing through different situations. Basically. Okay,
so again, playing with time and space and dimensions and all that sort of thing.
I mean, that's how, like the start of the Watchmen comic book, the comedian gets murdered, and you see them burst into the room, and then I think he gets kicked out the window, and then you see him fall, and then you see the smiley face fall with the blood on, and it's like a whole comic scene, and it was kind of inspired by that comic book. The Watchmen's like a really big graphic novel.
Yes, yeah, I know. Yeah, excellent. Okay. Have you got a couple more poems? Because now we're going to slightly more. You talk about the revolution will not be televised, the more kind of political stance. That
Yeah. So the two I'm going to end this section on. We're going to do Letters to the World and our poem named Steve. So I'm going to perform them. So if you want to ask anything about those two.
Yeah, absolutely. Because again, the poem named Steve is. It comes back to the theme right at the start of the ordinary versus the extraordinary, really, isn't it? So everybody has their own little way of changing their little world, and you can kind of expand it as much as you like.
So yeah, a poem named Steve is just a daft title for it, and basically, I guess it's like the different avenues I could have taken in my life, and like, so I used to feel, I don't know, in a way a little guilty, I suppose, or like I'd lost myself, like a version of myself, you know.
Yes.
The version of myself that never was, and like, so I studied a physics degree, and then I left that, and then I felt a little bit lost for a while, and there was no jobs because of the credit crunch, and I wasn't very well health-wise, and then I ended up doing radio, and I ended up doing more poetry and things, and that's the path that I took down. Whereas I could have done something that, I don't know, you probably wouldn't have changed the world, but it could have helped change the world in some way. And like, it's also comparing like my life to say my sister's, and she works with animals, and like she did things in India with WWF, and in Malta with like BirdLife Malta, and now she works at Chester Zoo, and she does like loads of things that are teaching people all about animals and conservation and things like that. Yes. So it's like the life of an artist versus the life of someone who does political things or you know, conservation things.
Yes, yeah. And in fact, this is particularly relevant at the moment when there's obviously a lot of question about the point of the arts.
Yeah.
You know, because we're all expected to retrain.
Well, exactly.
Because it's, I mean, by what medium do you communicate your ideas, you know, and what do you do when you get home? I've put a tweet about this actually. It's like, what, do you just sit in a cardboard box? Like, do you do anything at all? Because that is the.
Well, yeah, there's the post that's been shared a lot on Facebook, and it's like, you get home from your job and you're not allowed to see anyone, so you stick on Netflix and you watch Netflix for an hour, and that's got the music in the background, and then you stick on Spotify for a bit, and then you read a book, and then you listen to a podcast as you fall asleep, and who the fuck do you think creates that?
Yeah, but it's everything. But it's, you know, it's the design of everything you use as well. All of those devices you're using, everything has been designed by somebody. It didn't just appear.
Plus, a lot of the stuff I write about is like about artists, and like without art and without certain musicians, you wouldn't like exist, would you?
Exactly.
We probably would have all killed ourselves.
When the entire economy collapses, and you know, when the world just completely is destroyed by humanity, which is one of many possibilities, but it's one of the less favourable ones, there will still be art. Even at the end of that, we'll go back to cave drawings and telling stories around a fire in this nuclear winter that we've created for ourselves. The art will endure when nothing else will, basically.
I think so. And it's also like, especially when you're like a small scale artist and your art's only enjoyed by maybe 50 people or 100 people, and it's like, does my art really matter if it's only just these 100 people? They could just go and read John Cooper Clarke, or they could just flick on a Chopin record instead of one of your things, and it's like, because I'm not being heard by many people, is there any point to that, you know?
Well, yeah, and it is, because you're enjoying it for yourself as much as anything else.
Plus, I think it's like you inspiring the people around you to like keep going, and like they think, oh, that guy's so dedicated to him. Like, I might go and do something new or do something different.
Yeah, there's something infinitely admirable about dedication.
And another thing that I wanted to bring up is like, a lot of people are like scared. We talked about good and bad poetry, and a lot of people are scared about being bad. And a lot of people are scared about being ridiculed and rubbish and things like that. And it's like, you don't get good by standing up there and being good. I was rubbish. I was a good writer, but I was rubbish at performing for years because I was that nervous and probably that drunk at times. But you basically get good at things by failing a lot.
Yes, by being rubbish at it enough
being
times
rubbish
that
at
you
it and
can-
repeating it again and again.
Yeah, it's the same as my pupils as well. You know, they're quite cautious about playing when they know anybody can hear.
Yeah.
Well, just get on with it. Just play something. You play for yourself, if not for.
And a lot of people are let's admit, we're all very self-involved. So you just
yeah, of course.
you think everyone's like judging you all the time, but really they're just quite. Or they see what you're doing and they're actually just a bit envious because they'd love to be on stage doing it. Even if you're rubbish, they realise. Yes,
at least they're doing it.
Yeah.
You know? And exactly. So, if you would delight us with another poem too.
So I'm gonna do. Do you want to talk about Letter to the World as well, or?
We can do. I'll
do a pebble named Steve, and then we can have a pause, and then you can ask you a quick question. Right. So this is a pebble named Steve. One day you woke up and decided to save the world. I clung on, somehow along for the ride. That was very confusing. I'll start again. Our lovely cameraman Richard over there, he does the picture drone. You should really check him out. He was just mentioning the battery levels. And we got 2 poems left, so hopefully the batteries will be fine. But I'll restart that poem. A pebble named Steve. One day you woke up and decided to save the world. I clung on, somehow along for the ride. It started small, a few friends in a coffee shop. Policies on napkins, ideals, dreams, the whole grand plot. You were out there campaigning for a new future. I was watching old TV series camped under the duvet. I remember when you got elected to student council, I was on season 3. The Red Wedding had just completely destroyed me. You wondered if I could write a campaign song, something about green energy and the end of poverty. I wrote about a literate rock named Steve and his journey to the sea. It was worth to see you smile. You'd gone missing of late. And they said that you were an idealist, that there'd have to be changes if you wanted to be an MP. You formed the Common Sense Pie, said that had been lacking recently. Yep, daft name, that was down to me. Now you have the ear of kings and queens, phone numbers of dignitaries. And here's me, sat in the background, part of the scenery. Now I just write stupid love songs and tales of whimsy. We'll go straight into Letter to the World because I think
the battery's about to come. We can keep nattering well after this is finished as well.
So yeah, here we go. This is the Letter to the World, and it's a letter to the people in charge, I guess, and it's also about, dreaming and whether we still have those anymore, or still allow those anymore. I remember when we thought we could take on the world and win. I remember when our story was just about to begin. And now we're about halfway through and there's so much more left to do. Some days it feels like the world is just getting smaller. Some days it feels like the world is just getting darker. Now it's up for us to bring the light. Now it's up for us to raise our voice. When we have a choir 1,000 songs, we'll show them that we'll all belong. And I remember when we're told to chase our dreams. I remember we're told we're nothing we can achieve. I'm not quite sure what that means. Some days it seems they want us to burn our morals. Some days it seems they want us to set fire to the facts. Now is the time to act. Now is the time to be heard. And when we have 1,000 voices strong, we show them that we all give a fuck. I remember when I used to believe. I remember when I used to have hope. And now I'm not quite sure what to think. Some days it seems they want us to turn on one another, sister against sister, and brother against brother. And it's not like we're asking for much. It seems that our leaders are way out of touch. Just a bit of peace, freedom and equality. Please, dear God, don't start World War III. Yeah, I mean you, Trump. Yes, that's the first part of this show, and we'll be back soon, I guess.